Okay, so I have contrasting yarn for the provisional cast on so that we can see how to pick up the provisional cast on stitches. And then I have the yarn that I'm actually going to do goody doos. So I'm using large needles instead of the needles that I would use normally for the shawl. I'm using this Clover US 7. This is also a US 7. And then I have a size, it's a 4.25 millimeter crochet hook. So it's slightly smaller than the 4.5 that the 7 is, but that's fine. It doesn't really matter what size the crochet hook is. So what you're gonna do first is tie a knot at the end so you know this was the cast on part, and then you'll make a slip knot. There we go. You're gonna slip that onto your crochet hook. Beep. Okay. Now, here's the tricky part where it gets a little hard to hold. I'm gonna do it onto the DPN just because it's easier. You can do it on whatever makes it more, like whatever makes it easy for you. So you're going to hold, here's the working yarn that goes to the ball, and then here's your tail. So your tail you're just gonna tuck away out of the way, and you're gonna put the knitting needle on in front of the working yarn and underneath the crochet hook. And you're going to pull this working yarn, if I can get it to, there we go, that's a little better. So you're gonna pull the working yarn through the slip knot, and there, you have one provisional cast on stitch. Now you're gonna move the yarn to the back of the knitting needle and do the same thing again. You're gonna pull the yarn through the stitch on your hook, and you're gonna do that one more time because we only need to cast on 3 stitches for the provisional cast on. That's it. And then what I like to do is do a few chain stitches, so just going over itself rather than around the crochet hook, just in case anything happens. Cool. All right. Now you can cut this if you want to. This is just a bit of scrap yarn. So it's not going to be anything you use for the project. It's just going to be scrap yarn for this provisional cast on. So what you're going to do now is you're going to attach your working yarn, your actual yarn. So you insert the needle and pull that through. You're going to knit these 3 stitches. 2, 3. And then you can set your DPN aside or whatever works for you. So you're going to slip those 3 stitches back to the first needle. I find this is the easiest and fastest way to make an I-cord. The beginning gets a little bit loopy, so there. So you're gonna just keep knitting those 3 stitches over and over again. So this will be row 1 here. There we go. So now you have one I-cord row. And you're going to slip those 3 stitches back to the left-hand needle and repeat. And you're going to continue this for however long you need your ICord to be to do the ICord Tab Cast On in your pattern. So if it says that you need to have 27 ICord rows, if you look here, you have 1, 2, and then there's a third right there. So we've done 3 ICord rows so far. So let me show you how to do that if you're knitting with your left hand. So you're inserting the needle. Let me see if I can get this. And you're going to pull that yarn through. I'm not very good at this type of knitting. My tension is always off, but you're gonna still slip those 3 stitches back, and it's that first stitch that's always gonna give you problems if you're doing it with your left, if you're holding the yarn with your working yarn with your left hand, because you have to drag it across all the back of all 3 of those stitches that you just worked. So I just use my right pointer finger to secure the yarn while you pull it through the loop. And then it becomes easier because you're not knitting across the back of those 3 stitches anymore. You're just knitting as you normally would. Perfect. So I'm going to continue this, knitting these ICord rows. Until I get a good number and I can show you how to pick up stitches along the edge. Okay, so what we're gonna do is pick up stitches along the edge here. So we're gonna pick up, we'll say 10 stitches along the edge. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to skip this first set of stitches here. I find that makes it easier to actually turn your work and pick up along the edge. So we're gonna, instead of inserting it into this first row of stitches here, we're going to insert it into this second row of stitches here. So just inserting here, and then you're wrapping the yarn around and pulling it through. And that's it. That's all you have to do. So, and you just keep doing that along the line of stitches. There's that. And then if you're gonna hold your yarn in your left hand, here is how you would do that. So you would put the needle in to make sure you're inserting it into the same line of the leg of that stitch. So like we're not picking it up here, we're picking it up in this back one every time. I always find it really difficult to just secure my yarn to where I want it to be with holding it with my left hand. There. And you're inserting it into the next stitch and pulling it through. Inserting it into the next stitch and pulling it through, next stitch and pulling it through. So these first 3 stitches on the needle are going to be the 3 from your ICord. So that's going to be attached here. Cool. So these are the stitches that we've picked up so far. We've picked up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we only need 3 more. So here we go. So there's only 3 more. 1, 2, 3. Now again, I like to leave the last row of stitches, just like I did, skip a first row of stitches, sorry, in there so that we can turn that work. So that's how you do that part. Now, here is the trickiest part. So what you want to do is undo your provisional cast on and pick up those stitches, those live stitches after you pull out the ICord cast, or pull out the provisional cast on. Excuse me. Pull out the provisional cast on. And what I actually like to do is just pinch my work right where I'm pulling out the cast on. I find it really difficult to pick up these stitches before I have the orange yarn out. So you know that this is the first stitch that the yarn is through. So you can pick that up. I could just use this left needle, but I'm gonna just use this DPN because it'll be a little easier, and I'll show you why in a second. So we'll put the needle through there, through that stitch here, and that third stitch here. Okay, so those are our 3 ICord stitches. And now, so that's the front of the work. Now, if we were to leave it like that, it would end up the wrong direction. You would end up with a weird, sort of backwards ICord. So what you have to do before you put them onto your working needle, you're going to flip them. You're going to turn them around. And this is why the DPN comes in handy, because you can just slide it to the end and then you can slip those 3 stitches like normal. So before you slip those 3 stitches, you want to make sure your yarn is in the front of your work, and you're going to slip those 3 stitches. 1, 2, and it may be difficult to slip them because you flipped them around. And there we go. That is how you do the ICord Tab Cast On. So you're going to have your tail is going to be between these 3 stitches, and then what you're going to do now is work your setup row. So you're going to you'll purl back across most of these stitches, but you're going to knit the 3 stitches for the ICords on this side. So you're gonna, it's basically like the three end stitches are an ICord the whole way. So you're going to bring your yarn around and you're going to knit those 3 stitches. You're going to place a marker so that you know where those 3 stitches are, because you're always going to slip those 3 stitches at the end of the row. So you'll place a marker, you'll do what the pattern tells you to do until you get to the last 3 stitches, and you're going to place another marker before those 3 stitches so that you know when you get here. Here, I'll show you. So I don't have any stitch markers right now, but here. So we'll knit the 3, knit 3, okay, and then you're going to place a marker. I guess I could use this. I'll use my scrap yarn as a marker. Okay, so we'll put that marker there, okay, and then you're going to do whatever the pattern tells you for the middle stitches. I'm just going to purl across the back of them. Until you get to the last 3 stitches, because those are going to be your ICord stitches. So those 3, you're going to put a marker. There too. And then, since your yarn is already in the front, you don't have to move it to the front. you have to keep it in the front and slip those 3 stitches. Because you want to be able to always bring that yarn behind your I-cord stitches, so you're always going to put it in the back. Or make sure you're slipping it rather in the front of those stitches. So now, on the right side of the work, you can see, so here's your I-cord on the edge here, and then you've picked up stitches to work down from the I-cord. So I hope that was really helpful. I hope it was easy enough to understand, and I hope you could see what I was doing with that. There we go. So there is your ICord Tab Cast On.